Hey guys, today we're going to focus on the balances which have been applied to all classes. This mainly focuses on the PAX nodes, as Square Enix have stated. 80% of these are buffs, which in my opinion is fantastic, because it will bring a lot of build diversity to the game. Just to mention, I have got COVID, and I feel like crap, so if I don't sound enthusiastic, I am, but it's really hard to sound like it currently, but let's get into it. Looking at the Devastator, there have been some significant changes to the PAX nodes, some of the class tree nodes, and also to armor mods and armor sets. Starting with the PAX tree nodes, they're adding a cooldown to Earthen Shell. They said that there was a 1 second cooldown in the patch notes, but this doesn't appear on the PAX node itself, so I don't think anyone was the wiser of this. I remember from the beta this was dubbed as the cheese node by PCF Arcs, so I think this was a change which needed to happen because this was looked at and it was just simply too strong. Multi-strike and terms of engagement are now capped at 700% of anomaly power, whereas before they were uncapped, which was allowing for one-shots on bosses, and this was just bad for the game. I know it was fun for a lot of people, but yeah, this definitely needed to be changed. Finishing Touch now has an increased ammo to damage coefficient provided by this node. I don't personally understand what that means yet without testing it, so if anyone wants to put their thoughts in the comments, that would be greatly appreciated. Impact point has been changed so that damage scaling is now 50% instead of 30% of anomaly power, which will help improve on the changes that were made further down the PAX tree. Obliteration has had an increase in anomaly power and resistance piercing from 6 to 10%, making it a more viable option against puncture. Upheaval has had an increase in percentage of stored damage by an additional 5%, bumping it up to 15% overall. Elitism has had a significant change from 5 seconds cooldown to 1 second, which means that it will be active pretty much all of the time, which is kind of cool because this could be quite fun to play with. It does beg the question if a cooldown was really necessary at all though. Overwhelming Force is seeing a shift on armor to damage conversion by an additional 20%, bumping it up to 60% overall. All of these PAX tree changes are to incite different ways of playing the class to bring build diversity. I think these are all welcome changes. As for the class tree changes, the protection keyword is being taken away from the Paladin and Champion nodes and changed to activate on any skill. This hopefully will make builds more diverse, however they need to make some more changes to reflect bullet mods to make sure that they still remain relevant, and what they've done is they've increased the damage by nearly 2 times on bullet acceleration and increasing damage to strongest first by an additional 25%, which are tiered 1 mods for the reflect bullet skill. On the flip side however, we are seeing a nerf to Despair, which will reduce its anomaly damage multiplier by 70%, and this will help put an end to the leap quake way of playing, because let's be honest, that was literally the way that every single Devastator was playing, and it moves us quite nicely onto our armor changes. The Seismic Commander set has been the OP set for the Devastator for a long time now, which has resulted in most armors being shunned as a result. We're seeing improvements to Bannerlord, Marshal, and the Concussioner set, and a very small change to the statue legs. Bannerlord is getting a 35% anomaly power bonus to the set, which is designed to make it more appealing. Marshal is getting increases in percentages of physical and anomaly damage by 20%, and the Concussioner set is being completely changed from an anomaly power build to firepower because it suffered from Identity Crisis. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a meme floating around for this at some point. They've also changed the other attributes to close range and status power. Moving on, we're going to touch on the Technomancer now. Lethal Devices has had a very slight cooldown to the node's secondary effect, which will likely see a reduction in the node's power, but hopefully not too noticeably. Lethal Device is always at the top of a damage sheet, so probably needed the tweak. It will be interesting to see how this plays out though, because I don't really want to see it nerfed too hard. Twin Reaper is getting a buff and is aimed to satisfy Songs of Rays at Babylon because he absolutely loves sniper builds. All joking aside, this is aimed at all players who like sniper rifles, but are sniper rifles really a good fit in Outriders? You tell me. Kinetic Converter has been adjusted on cooldown from 5 seconds to 1 second so that the healer class can take over. I will be doing some build testing on this to see what I can come up with, so keep an eye out for that. Hastened Influence is receiving some mysterious buff I think, but I don't know what it will be due to it making no sense whatsoever in the patch notes. But apparently it's themed for Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Burrowed Charge is getting a reduced cooldown, and to be honest, is a node which is actually pretty damn decent on damage perspective. This will make it more viable versus bosses however. Blightfire is getting the bug fixes it needed through the Flame Leper set, and also is now going to work with mods which bolster toxic damage such as Euthanizer and Radical Therapy. Thank God. Oh, and also check out my nuke Techno, because it's incredibly fun to play with and uses Blightfire in an extremely fun way, and something which you might not have actually considered doing before. Oh, and they're also making a change to the Downpour set, improving on the shrapnel damage by 15%, so that will be pretty cool to play with, and there could be improvements made to how shrapnel performs overall. Moving on to the Pyromancer now, Carbon Footprint is getting a cooldown reduction increase to 1 second, Carbonization is seeing the damage multiplier increased to 25%. The reasoning behind these two changes is because the immobilized skills are underrepresented, so they're increasing the cooldown as a result. Convection is seeing a 50% reduction on the cooldown reduction, as it has been overshadowed by Arsonist due to launching in an undesirable state. Basically, cooldowns will still be reduced, but nowhere near as drastically as they once were. Arsonist is seeing a very slight reduction in cooldown from 5 seconds to 4 seconds to make it more appealing. Solar Flare is getting an increase to critical damage stacks, so this will give a total of 10% extra critical damage, which I'm sure Firepower Pyromancers will be very happy to hear. Critical Mass is seeing an increase in duration from 2 to 5 seconds, which is pretty cool, as this will make the Pyromancer a crit magnet. I'm sure some pretty juicy firepower builds are going to be making their way from this. Master Exploder is getting a reduced conversion rate from 100% to 50% as it outshined a trigger sequence. Backdraft is seeing a reduced anomaly power ramp per stack from 30% to 25%, and again is to compensate trigger sequence. Trigger sequence is getting a buff on damage from 25% to 35% to counter this, so it isn't outshined again. Burnt Offerings is getting a huge boost, and I'm excited to see what comes from this. It is being bumped from 10% to 20% per tick. Wildfire and Conduction class 3 nodes weren't working properly, so they have now fixed this. Mark of the Anomaly is getting a slight increase to help firepower builds, and Susceptibility is getting a reduction from 40% to 30% as it was considered too high it seems. We're also seeing some buffs to armor sets, the Reforged and Torturer sets. On the Reforged set, Thermal Bomb and Feed the Flames damage are being increased by 100%, which will make it a very viable option for some fun builds, and the Torturer set is getting an increase in damage shed from 30% to 50%, similar to the Devastator martial armor set. And we save the best till last, the Trickster class. Quantum Entanglement is getting an increase in shed damage by 10%, so it will be 30% overall. This is just to make it better than using Time Rift, the Pain Transfer mod, which is kinda cool because it was really strong already. Special Tactics has been increased in duration from 3 to 5 seconds and will make it a more desirable as a capstone. Cheap Shot is getting a buff in duration to 10 seconds, and I think is a very welcome change due to how short it was, and also will increase armor and resistance reduction to enemies. Spectral Spike is getting a cooldown reduction by 50% so it can reach its maximum potency quicker. Temporal Blade is seeing a cooldown reduction by 3 seconds of its core values, which is quite big to be fair, and will make it a more used skill. Slow Trap is seeing a reduction in cooldown by 20%, but I doubt it will make it into Jace Manic Lives builds, as Time Rift is just too OP versus it. Terminal Velocity is getting an increase for weapon damage bonus from 60% to 80%, however it is still far off the original 125%, however this leads us nicely into the universal change for all firepower classes. All weapon damage nodes are being increased to 15% from 8% to balanced firepower versus anomaly power, giving up to an additional 28% overall extra damage, which is pretty cool. Same goes for anomaly power nodes too, however to counter the Mage's Rage fix. Mage's Rage wasn't working correctly and was a lot stronger than intended. This is now fixed, so I suppose we'll see how much of a difference it actually makes. On the bright side, they buffed Fortress a bit as well. Self-medication is being nerfed to work as intended. It won't be helping you defy death at every turn now. No Resistance against the Fortified is getting a decrease in potency, which I am sad about, because this was my go-to mod, but I guess it had to happen. Dark Sacrifice and Killing Spree is getting buffed slightly, but these mods are nowhere near as good as they used to be, and that was just because they were just too strong to begin with. They also balanced Dark Sacrifice nicely to reduce health less, so when it took away 50% of your health previously, it now will only take away 25%. First Things First was always a great area. Personally, I don't think a T1 mod should hold that much value, and I don't rate this mod all that highly despite how it works. Tactical Retreat I haven't used yet, and it just never really sounded that appealing, but maybe I'll give it a go now it's seen a buff. Shock and Awe was triggering more than intended, but also has had its range doubled now, since that has now been fixed. And finally, there are some updates to Universal Armor sets, the Maxwell Demon and the Trigger Twitch sets. The Trigger Twitch has had its firepower coefficient increased by 7 times, which should be fun to play with, and the Maxwell Demon set has had a bug fix as it wasn't working correctly, which will also increase its strength, but how significantly I have no idea as of yet. Anyway guys, there has been a ton of information to go through today. I hope you found this useful and informative, and I'll catch you on the next one.